Hello and welcome to Decoding the Gurus, the podcast where anthropologists and a psychologist listen to the greatest minds the world has to offer, and we try to understand what they're talking about. I'm Professor Matt Brown. With me is Associate Professor Chris Kavanagh, and in a world first for Decoding the Gurus, we have not one, but two special guests with us today, don't we, Chris?
We do. We have not just two guests, Matt. We have a returning guest. We managed not to scare him off the first time. We talked to him about the Weinsteins for hours, and he demanded to come back. He wanted to do just another couple of hours on the Weinsteins, but we said no. This time, slightly different topic. So, the world famous social and moral psychologist, Joe Rogan's biggest defender on the interwebs, David Pizarro. Welcome, Dave. Feel free to say the M word.
But thank you for not again. I'm not falling for that one again. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'm totally down to talk about Joe Rogan for the next 2 hours. So let's go. Let's do this.
That's good. But this time you are not alone. You brought with you your co-host and but hold on. I hear something strange in the background. It's sounds like some ghostly apparitions. It's the philosopher Tamler Sommers, noted ghost hunter and philosopher. Welcome, Tamler.
Fuck all of you.
I had to go a long way for that joke.
That was funny. Definitely funny. I'll never live that down, and I'll stand by it. I'll talk about it all day. I'll talk about that before I talk about Joe Rogan.
That's at least 50% of the reason you're here, Tamler. Is I've got a lot to say about those the universal evidence for ghost perception, but yeah. So you guys have a small podcast. It's kind of like ours, maybe lesser known, a bit more niche, and but I think you started a bit before us, maybe. So the Very Bad Wizards is the podcast, right, Matt? Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
I have heard of it. Yeah. You told me about it. I'll have to listen to it one of these days.
You tried to make that joke about Sam Harris on Twitter, and his followers were so literal minded. They were like, how could they call Sam Harris a small independent podcaster? So I hope we get the same level of outrage from our fans.
I've had a lot of mileage with that joke. I'm using it almost every time we have people that have a bigger profile than us, but like you say, the only people to react with outrage was our Sam's fans. Actually, Sam's Reddit is just today still posting clips from our interview. They're usually complaining about us. So we're still on their mind. So thank you for organizing that, Dave. It was
You
experience.
burrowed your way into that community.
Yeah.
You know that feeling. First you get attacked, but then they come around.
That's right. You guys have a huge contingent of fans from Sam, right? There's like massive crossover.
Totally.
Have you guys managed to accrue like a sizable hate following, like a community that?
I don't think.
Not really. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, if they might be the silent majority, but they're pretty silent.
No, you're probably too bland, milquetoast, middle of the road.
We are.
That's what I think it is. We try to be all things for all people. We try to please everybody.
That's right.
You guys haven't spent much time on your subreddit, have you?
Not lately.
They're fine people. In fact, as we've mentioned previously, our subreddit and perhaps our entire audience was an offshoot from somebody in your subreddit. We owe a lot to following
very
your
incestuous community. Very.
Yeah.
It's very
We don't
Yeah.
seem to be getting proceeds or royalties from your Patreon or anything like that. I don't know if the check
They're-
got lost or something.
Yeah, they're coming. They're coming. Tomat as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, let me know.
So don't worry about those kind of things. But in another instantiation of that kind of parasitic relationship, what I thought we'd do today was like kind of steal your format. So you guys often do this thing where you have like a culture war heavy intro segment and you get it like all over and done with, and then you move into the papers or the movies that you're dissecting, the like high grade art. So we're going to talk in the second part about Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master film, which we watched and we have some thoughts about, not very deep ones, but we have them. But to start with, we thought, the culture war. What's that all about?
Well, guys, before we do that, I mean, I got to say, I feel like the culture war is on hiatus. Like it's been
because the
kind of
actual
out.
war.
because of the war.
Yeah.
Yeah, the war. It's like a silver lining to war in Eastern Europe.
But it's not
Is
like they're
it
not
worth
trying.
it? I mean, if we're being honest, it might be worth it, right?
it might, if we're being
I mean-
just based on my Twitter feed.
That's terrible.
Then yes.
But you must have seen that, like all of the kind of culture war poisoned accounts are really, really trying to be like, actually, this war is because Putin saw our weakness, our obsession with pronouns, and he thought like, now is the time. This is it. And yeah, the takes.
Well,
have
there
been
was
flying.
the little moment, right, when people were like just kind of admiring the bravery of the Ukrainian people, and then they were using it as a way of criticizing whoever they wanted to criticize the United States for having no courage. And so they'd be like, you see these Ukrainians who are coming back to, join the militia and defend their country, and then and then these fucking critical race theorists, like, complaining about, the new whatever.
Yeah,
Trans
they're
bill.
cowards.
Yeah, there's a nice narrative there about the decadent West who have their first world problems and now getting to understand what a real problem looks like. I have to admit there is something real to the
Yeah,
concept.
but those account, there is a sort of a desperate bid for relevance when you have to bring the problems of like these other foreign powers struggling with each other. You have to like bring it back to some like little American shit that we're fighting out. It's just I actually am, to be honest, a little sick of anybody saying anything about this on social media. Like I just feel like just shut up. Like
Yeah.
just let people fight wars. I don't know.
I don't know that
We're
people
offering
fight-
a lot of wisdom here. Right?
Yeah,
We're bringing.
philosophical
okay,
and psychological insight.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is like it has a similarity to the COVID thing, right? Because like COVID, it's a real material thing. Yeah, it's an absolute disaster, which doesn't actually intrinsically map on very well to the kinds of ideological wars that we're fighting in our heads. But like we saw with COVID, people had very little trouble to develop this entire ideological edifice on the back of vaccines and alternative treatments and mandates and lockdowns and so on.
Yeah, I really hope that doesn't happen with Ukraine, because everybody seems kind of on board with it's awful. We need, this was unexpected and nobody really predicted it. Like the hawks, the left, the centrists, everyone was kind of a little bit taken aback by it. They all thought Putin would never do it. And so it's hard to score points with this one. And the people who tried seem to like peter out and lose heart after
right.
it.
That's true.
I think you guys look at, you don't look at the bad parts of Twitter, because like James Lindsay has not petered out about this.
But
Like
that doesn't count though.
Look, he's saying it's a psyop. He said Zelensky is a psyop from the World Economics Forum to instigate critical race theory in order to create, like communism within a fascism inside America. So
what is it about James Lindsay that can just obsess people to the point of mania, though?
By people
can't let him
you
go.
mean
He's
Chris
just
Kavanaugh?
obviously
Chris.
insane.
No, I don't look. I generally don't look at him, but the occasions when I do is when he's just like, he's just completely hitting Alex Jones stuff, right? Alex Jones is saying similar kind of things, and even he had to take, like, Alex Jones is a big Putin fan, and even he had to take, a step back to be, oh, right. And he was trying to like work it, but James was like full bore into the dialectic, as when that came. So it's impressive in a sense. And in the same way, like Brett Weinstein suggested that Fauci was somehow kind of going to have to reward Putin for like getting the world to stop looking at his nefarious schemes. Like they're all, it's kind of breathtaking, the balls on people, or like, because Matt was pointing out that, when you look at the threads, they get thousands of responses saying, you are a fucking idiot, shut up, like just tons and tons of responses saying what morons they are. But it's like, it's water off duck's back. They're just like, dun, 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 away they go. So
I feel like these people really are in a desperate bid to stay relevant and to co-opt whatever tragedy. And I do think, though, I share some of Tamler's optimism here that COVID was in some ways a much more fertile ground for a culture war because of the high degree of uncertainty and the link with science. Like right now we're getting images of missile strikes hitting buildings in Ukraine does not provide one with that, like that level of uncertainty that, wearing, or of annoyance of wearing a mask or whatever. It feels like they're throwing theories against the wall and nothing's really sticking. And I hope they can just lose relevance altogether by showing, their true colors. But
Yeah.
Well,
I do think the Fauci one makes a little bit of sense. I mean,
I put his thumb in a lot of pies, Fauci.
I didn't think of it myself, but now that you brought that up, like,
I was thinking when you were saying that, Dave, if there's one situation which is famous for clarity and not generating conspiracy theories, it's international conflict. So that's a good word.
Right.
It's a hopeful thought.
But I feel like people, I don't know, but people out there who are actually having to fight this thing are probably like, just like nobody there is endorsing these narratives, I don't think. So there's not going to be uptake from the real relevant characters. We don't have. Yeah. It's like when you have White House press conferences and shit, and people can hop on Twitter and talk about politicians and talk about like American legislation based on flawed science. But there, it's like we really don't have that. I don't know.
Yeah.
We need to focus on more important things, like what Sam Elliott said about Power of the Dog.
I'm very curious, Tamler, to talk to like something which comes up a lot in the culture war, and it's close to my heart. So ghosts, like those, when you say, that you're open to their existence, or, that we don't really know, that's a bit, right? Like
I don't mean open like sexually or like Like it's not like The Exorcist or something like that.
I remember the key piece of evidence that you offered in that discussion with Dave was that there are recurrent motives across like diverse cultures and times in the way that ghosts are presented. And
millions of reports, like
yes, yeah. And I couldn't help but think, like, is there not perhaps another explanation for that is not that, you know, there are immaterial disembodied spirits haunting the world, but, you know, human brains might reliably create the same kind of errors in detection of agency, and social organizations might be concerned about what happens to people when they die. These are just ideas. I know, crazy, but
I mean, like, that's like a very hypothetical speculation. I don't like. Do you have the research to back that up? That's what's responsible for those millions of reports. Like, I mean, it's definitely possible. I'm not denying that it's possible. It's probably even more likely than there are ghosts, that there's something like the story that you're telling. But it's the idea that that's like we've already totally figured this out, I think, is just, you know, it's naive on the part of and as like I always accuse Dave of, it's scientism. You've already assumed that the world is like as materialists think it is, and so you then just, like, you know, you just assume that anything that your framework can't explain is, well, there's some kind of naturalistic explanation here. I'll just say it's people who are afraid of death, and that's why they have these, and it's only a few people, and it's often in localized places, like but there's got to be an explanation for it. I mean, that's fine. Like, I get it. I used to be like, like it's a phase. That's the thing that you guys don't get. You're going through a phase.
This
is
why
get
you
out
can't.
Of it, and it's fine. Like, I think it's actually important.
It's scary.
You want to know the answer to whether Tamler is trolling, and the truth is that he is in a state of quantum superposition. He doesn't know whether he's trolling anymore.
He's the ghost. He can be a ghost.
The best evidence for ghosts is that Tamler must be possessed by a demon of some sort, who may or may not be the spirit of a dead ancestor.
That's there's a field, Tamler, that I'm intimately familiar with, called it's got a very scientific name, so you'll love it. The cognitive science of religion. On its plus side, Dawkins and Sam Harris and co never ever read any of the research in it. They don't care about it. But it's the primary
big guy in that.
There's a pantheon. There's a pantheon far beyond me to like signal people out. But like Harvey Whitehouse is the group I'm most involved with. You would know, like, Ted Slingerland, Justin Barrett, the psychologist, Pascal Boyer.
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking. Pascal Boyer. Yeah.
These kind of people. So I'm involved in that field, and we are doing what you are accusing of us, like taking a naturalistic approach to, religious and ritual topics. So there might be,
which I don't oppose. I think that's fine to do it. Yeah.
But I think in terms of, you know, people seeing apparitions of the Virgin Mary and stuff, maybe it's because in my case, like, I come from a Catholic background, so it's very common for me to have I'm not saying like all Catholics are falling down saying, the Virgin Mary appeared this morning, but you know, it's it references to people having, you know, mass apparitions, or people seeing things. Like, I think all of that happens, and I don't think it's rare. In fact, I think, like, most people are, including myself, are prone to irrationalism and like seeing, you know, ghosts and demons all over the place, and being superstitious, and that's fine. I like the world with that in it. I think unfortunately we live in a much more bleak and empty world with like no spiritual meaning to it. So that's the unfortunate part.
Well, I have a question for Tamler. So let's take another issue that's I think structurally similar, which is UFOs. So similar to apparitions, a lot of sightings, a lot of slightly mysterious phenomena that could have can be explained away in a materialistic way, or could be something real. So what would you apply the same sort of logic there that it
Yeah,
a
I mean, I
trap.
think yeah, clearly this is a trap that I'm walking into. But I'll do it. I don't care. I
no,
don't give a
it's
fuck.
okay. No.
Yeah. It's I would, if you asked me like to give a probability, I would probably say UFOs, like not alien life somewhere, but UFOs that have actually
you're
come
UFOs.
here, and there's some that have been spotted that are real. I would put that less likely maybe than some
Like-
sort, just because of the scope of the evidence. And I know it's not evidence like people going into a lab or filling out like surveys on Mechanical Turk or something, but just the massive number of anecdotal reports. It's like it's just way more with UFO. I'm sorry, with ghosts. Also, like, I think UFOs are not something that people who this is a bad reason, and everyone makes fun of me. I think there's even a Reddit tag on our website that like ghosts are real because Mark Twain said so. But so I'm gonna do this again. And I'm going to say that, like, I was just listening to a podcast with Mark Frost, where Mark Frost was saying that he had an encounter with a ghost, and it was really vivid. And, there aren't people. And so, like, I thought that should just settle this debate right now. But you don't have that with UFOs. Like, I don't know of people that had a kind of sighting of that are, at the level of somebody that I was like, oh, I got to take this really seriously. It may be that that's happened, but I don't know of them. But I do know of so many people, including like personally, but then also people that I respect from afar that have had ghost experiences. So I think you just have to be open to it, because I haven't. I am very agnostic about it, but I think it's weird to be this certain that it's not the case.
But it's not weird. So what I just wanted to jump in and say, one, Matt, you say you're from Australia, and we know that there's clear evidence that Australia doesn't exist. I've seen the Reddit threads. So one, bullshit, you probably don't exist. But two, what bothers me, Tamler, every time you say scientism is that the whole force of that critique comes from the fact that spiritualism was once critiqued as relying on completely shoddy foundations. And so what you're saying in essence, really by using that is, at best, science can be on as shaky a foundation as the claim that spirits exist.
I don't get that. What do you mean?
Right. So like the reason that we put ism after science is to make a real clear analogy to a complete bullshit field. Right. That's why the term scientism exists, not science. Because what you're saying is
I don't think that's the meaning of scientism. It's more just somebody who's so committed to it that they can't
but no
think
scientist
outside of that.
But no scientist is committed to any specific claim. Like it really is. It's like every scientist has like a threshold that has to be met to believe anything. And the whole point about you flipping it around and saying, okay, but if you're saying that ghosts don't exist, then you are being as dogmatic. It just always feels like such a weird move, because it's the dogma of religion and spiritualism that science is very much taking a position of humility and saying like, look, let's wait for evidence, you know?
I don't think that it's humility, the position you're taking, because you're not open to it. And in spite of the millions and millions of reports to the contrary. So when you say scientism, how I understand that is if something can't be verified by this method that we have determined and that has been very successful for our purposes, if that method can't verify the existence of something, then we should say it doesn't exist. And we should ridicule people who are open to the possibility that those entities exist. I just think that that's how I understand scientism. It is a very effective, the scientific method is very effective. That doesn't mean it captures all truths or that all ways of understanding reality are amenable to that methodology. That's all I mean by it.
I have a slightly conciliatory comment here, and I feel
That's
bad
shocking.
because
That's shocking.
everyone is ganging up on Tamler, and it's just wrong.
I'm used to it.
I think maybe the difference in outlooks is got to do with the sort of null hypothesis and how we kind of approach it. Like, I think, like if you put aside what we currently understand about physical mechanisms, like plausible causes and methods of action, then I think I understand your point of view, Tamler, which is that, you've got an ambiguous situation. You've got a bunch of reports of people saying that they see something. On the other hand, there might have been some other tests, say sciencey type ones, that fail to validate this. So we're left in a kind of a bit of a quandary. We might well weight the sort of the other explanation that it doesn't exist more highly, but you would not be prepared to discount it, I think. Whereas I think where people like Chris and David are coming from is that without that, because there's no plausible mechanism based on everything we currently understand about how the universe works, then the default position is that it's not true until proven otherwise. I think that's probably the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good way of that's a very compelling way of stating the position that is opposed to me. I would say that the way we understand the universe at the deepest level is in total flux, and it's also deeply weird and strange. And so while we don't totally understand the plausible mechanism for it, we don't understand so much of how the universe works at the quantum level, at the macro level, that it could fit in. I think it's just it's an epistemological question ultimately. And if science and the scientific method doesn't encompass your entire epistemology, then I think you can leave room for it just on the basis of how the ubiquity of these reports from ancient times to now. And it's also, I know so many people who have reported this to me. I don't think they're crazy. I don't think they're hallucinating things. I think that something for sure is going on, and we should honor that. We should take them seriously.
Can I just give an anecdote by way of maybe moving us on, because this, I think, is one of the funniest things anybody's ever told me. So I think we're having an argument that's been had so many times, and you may be familiar with the example of Russell's teapot. This example, right? So I was having dinner with somebody, and he was very familiar with the argument that Tamler and I have had. And so he brought up this example of Russell's teapot. Imagine I said there was a teapot that was, I don't remember what he said, in orbit somewhere between, Earth and the sun. And you shift the burden of proof. And I say, well, you can't, like, who are you to say that there's not, right? So it's a shifting of the burden of proof. So this guy who had a lot of tattoos tells us that that he's been getting a lot more into getting tattoos lately, and he says that he actually got a tattoo of Russell's teapot on his ass. And he said this really deadpan, and all of us at the table were like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah." And we're like, then he says, "But I'll never show it to anybody." And he left us in the perfect limbo. We could not tell whether or not he was fucking with us, whether this guy really had Russell's teapot on his ass. This is just the perfect.
Tamler, I also have to say, and we can leave the ghosts to haunt their graves, but there's a discipline, a little known discipline that often gets overlooked called anthropology. I have a feeling that you might be inclined towards you might like a lot of the things there because often I'm very frustrated with anthropologists. So
we should read more. We should do some good anthropology, Tamler.
Yeah,
We should pick
I would
some
love
reading.
that.
We should get some suggestions from our.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You should be. You're better than this if you're an anthropologist.
Look, I've been standing in
You
a.
need to be like Michael fucking Shermer.
Oh God! Look, fuck you, Tamler. Fuck you. I'm not Michael Shermer. I didn't write an article about Milo being good. I've been standing in minus 15 degrees in a little village in northern Japan while a relatively obese Japanese man poured ice cold water over me as I stood in a kind of fundoshi, traditional white thong. So I've done my time in the irrational,
the spiritual realm.
Yeah. I've seen ghosts, man, but they're mainly my white body glimmering in the Japanese night when nobody's around to see them. Though there are photos of that event, which I sent to my supervisor at the time, and he now uses on his slide constantly. So, yeah.
Patron, is it a patron subscriber perk?
I'll put it there. I'll put it there. They can see. It's actually, they're not my white pants. I had to borrow someone's white pants, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, I'm not opposed to
taking a
this.
strange turn.
That's so much worse.
No, yeah, but I don't mean like they were in use.
What kind of podcast is this?
I mean, like they kindly lent me the I was wearing inappropriate boxers for the ceremony. It was at a Japanese Shinto shrine, and they actually, that ritual, this is complete tangent, I'm sorry, but like it's a kind of interesting event because they do this thing where they get three boys who volunteer, and for 5 years in a row they have to do this ritual where once a year for 3 days in a row they come out to this like straw laden stage, and they get ice cold water poured over them, and they're in northern Japan in the winter, so temperatures like minus 10 to minus 15, and they need to do it every couple of hours for 3 days, and then come back and do it each year for 5 years, and then they grade out of it, and it's unmarried young boys do it, and they let me do it when I was there, but I only had to do it once. So I felt like such a, because it was like, oh, it's so cold and it's so bad. And you could see in their eyes, like, fuck you, you're just doing this once for like 20 minutes. We're here for years, man. But yeah, that's so look, so Tamler, the mysterious things, they're interesting. I just approach them from a slightly different thing, but I still think there's a lot of interesting stuff there in ritual and religion. So that doesn't lend itself well to discussion. It might even just disappear into the ether. But I think something that we can cover really, really briefly, because Matt and I are sick talking about it. I'm sure you are as well is like, but people kept asking us to mention it with you guys about Rogan, right? And like my only take on that, and it will literally 30 seconds, is if you guys listen to the Rogan episodes, you won't be so sanguine about, what he's saying and how he's just, he's all right. If you had to listen to 6 hours of him talking shit about, the pandemic and the doctors trying to kill the children and all this, I think your sympathy would evaporate like the cold ice hitting my white body on a dark night.
Nice way of bringing it back.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I think that's fair, and I think one of the tricks that Rogan pulls for me is that I listen to the things that I want to listen to. Right, so he has such a wide range of people that he brings on that, like, I actually find myself watching him talk to, well, recently Ben Burgess, for instance. But shit, like, MMA fighters or directors, right? Like his interview with Tarantino, I'll listen to it and I just won't listen. I've seen him say crazy shit. I've seen having Alex Jones on, and I think we just did a bad job of saying it's not that we think he isn't potentially damaging, or at least I was trying to say that. Is just that I felt like Fox News easily orders of magnitude is worse, and where there's just, it's not like the topic of conversation that week in the news cycle. I don't know.
I would say even further that, you have to trust people in their critical faculties, and he's having people on, and you don't have to listen to it for 6 hours. You're right. Maybe I would have a different opinion if I listened to it, but I don't listen to it for 6 hours, and I don't watch Fox News. So, like, I don't get why all of a sudden people, and it lasted like a couple of weeks. All of a sudden people felt like they had to, announce how they felt about Joe Rogan and a couple of recent guests, and the fact that he's open to ivermectin or something. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, why is that something that needs people need to preoccupy themselves? It must be, and tell me if you guys think this, because you guys seem to be more
careful,
both, aware and kind of preoccupied with it. Like, do you think he's just has this massive influence over like 22 to 35-year-old men and making them like shoot ivermectin into their ass and not get vaccinated and refuse to wear masks? Or like, what do you think is the effect of this?
I wouldn't try to quantify Joe Rogan in isolation, but how many Americans are unvaccinated? Is it like 40%, something like that?
I think it's a little less at this point. Yeah. But
But there's a lot of people who are unvaccinated, and I think the vast majority of them are people who believe the kind of stuff that's been said by Joe Rogan's guests or Joe Rogan and people in that circle, and they really are a pretty well organized group of anti-vaxxers. They're not kind of exploring ideas of, is it possible that ivermectin might be useful? No, they are dead certain, and they push that, and they're dead certain that you shouldn't get vaccinated, and that it's all a plot.
How much do you think of that, like, Joe Rogan contributes to that? Because like all this stuff had been happening long before Joe Rogan got interested in this issue.
Yeah, but I think a lot actually. I'll let these guys have listened, but he has had like he fuels the fires of the Weinsteins who are just asking questions, and I mean, like, you can't quantify it, but I would put the number of people who you could link causally to dying because of Joe Rogan is a non-trivial number.
Yeah.
And I think, I guess my counterpoint to it would be, we all accept that anti-vaxxers and, various vagaries of pseudoscience are going to be there. And, like you said, Tamler, in some respects, it's up to people. They have to make their choices themselves about what sources they trust. But I think that's part of the concern is like, you're not going to hear a lot of the figures that are like hardcore. You don't see Andrew Wakefield on the news. You don't even see him on Fox News anymore. But that is what you're seeing on Joe now. The next wave of Andrew Wakefields, and I admit that, you know, quite obviously we have an interest in these weird neck of the woods. And there's a podcast I follow called QAnon Anonymous. You know, it kind of focuses on the Q community, and they were talking about the
I've listened to a couple of those. Yeah.
They're very funny. They're good. I mean, they're great. But they were following the American trucker convoy. It's coming your way, by the way. They and at the kickoff of that event, you had Pierre Corey, Robert Malone, Peter McCulloch, all these guests on Rogan. And when they were at that event, the rhetoric was like, it was really strong. It wasn't even on Rogan, it was quite strong. But in that element, they were saying, no, you're injecting your children, you're killing your children. We shown that we could save 90% of people. And I think that goes into, you know, the MAGA world, the QAnon world, the far right. So Rogan's just a piece of that, but he's probably the piece which is the most likely for normal people to listen to, because he does do interesting stuff. Like I liked his interview with Carrot Top. That was fun, but that's the problem, that like he's a guy that isn't treated as if platforming Andrew Wakefield is an issue. I mean, people are now saying it's an issue, but I think that's it. Like if you had Andrew Wakefield on, it would be concerning. And Joe has, like, you know, HIV AIDS denialist guys on. That's, yeah.
So here's the other difference maybe between me and you. And now this is going to get a lot of blowback probably on my end. But
that's
I
good.
actually think that the consensus kind of liberal take on COVID has not had the best track record. And there's a lot of people that have been oversold on the, say, effectiveness of masks, and especially masks in schools, and also maybe like I've looked at some of this research, but I think with a little oversold on the effectiveness of vaccines, certainly to prevent reinfection, and in otherwise healthy young people, their just effectiveness or importance for keeping people out of the hospital. I think it's been a little bit oversold on that side too. And so I'm a little more open to having wacky people who are not doing it. And I don't think Joe Rogan is doing it purely for reasons of polarization, right? Like, this is the thing that I kind of respect about it, is it's not just like Fox News where it's like, okay, we have to be anti-vax now, or we have to be like, what do we have to do? We have to be anti-mask. We have to be like requiring vaccinations in school or whatever. Like, they'll just do whatever their political base is telling them to do, or whatever the leaders of the most right-wing part of the party will tell them to do. But I don't think Joe Rogan's like that. I don't think he has any kind of political agenda like that. So I'm happy to see, even if some of these people are crackpots, as I totally believe they are, like, just get some things out there, because I don't think like Vox and The Atlantic, they've had their share of just hysterical bullshit too.
My blood pressure is going up at this right now, because I know these guys are gonna be nice to you, but Rogan very much is exactly what you're saying. He's not. And it betrays that you haven't watched these episodes. He is
totally true.
Yeah, he's like angry. He's angry.
Not a single second of
Yeah, and I'll say this about vax. Like, I'm a little chagrined, because oversold, I don't think is the right word. I think that getting young people vaxxed has saved the lives of older people. And I feel like, I've had two people in my life die from this shit, right? Like one young and one older, and the older one, because a young person probably gave it to him. So like, oversold on what? Like you're
Oversold
like
on that it would have prevented the kid from getting an infection that they could then pass on, because I know so many kids who got COVID and
the
who passed
viral-
it on to other people.
but
They're
the
all
viral
like
load-
boosted and vaccinated. Like, all I'm saying is that's it's
But
true.
the viral load is just smaller. Like vaccines work. Like nobody ever on the left said you won't get infected if you get a vaccine.
No, that's not true. They were much more confident about how it would prevent infection at
Some
the beginning.
CNN
But
figures. But Tamler, I will say, like, I live in Japan, right? And so thankfully, there's a nice bit of distance from the US and even the UK culture war. And like over here, people wore masks. They already wore masks before the pandemic when they got sick. It was a normal thing. So there was no outcry over the wearing of masks. The government did Japan is a different social environment where the government issues recommendations and people follow them. But the thing that struck me is like I'm driving home from the office late at night sometimes, right? And there's people walking out on the road at about 1 a.m. or whatever, like not just wandering around. It's not like zombies, but they're going to the shop or whatever, and they're wearing masks. Now they don't need to, right? There's not a logic there, but the thing that they're doing it for is that they don't see it as that much of an inconvenience. They go into the shop and the emphasis is very much on just, it's a small sacrifice to make for other people. And the kids and stuff in Japan as well. Like my kid, he doesn't like wearing mask, right? He eats it most of the time. And my youngest is like 2. So he also, he doesn't wear it perfectly or those kind of things on the occasions when he has to. But it just struck me that it doesn't have to be this huge thing with all these, the kind of political valences to it, because the same thing is happening in Japan, and it's just like people aren't freaking out about it. So it's just not a big deal, and people will stop wearing masks when the cases go down. Like that just it's the whole mask thing always strikes me as this very American, and the UK is the same thing, like this kind of hyper focus on individual freedom is the most important thing, and like fuck it, if we're gonna kill older people, or if some must be sacrificed for my liberty, the kind of libertarian vibe. Is that unfair? I'm not accusing you of being, don't tread on me, libertarian.
No, I think the question is what the actual scientific effectiveness of the wearing masks is, say, right? Like, so we don't stop people from driving cars, even though driving cars can kill people. And obviously it would be much more inconvenient to tell people to drive cars than it would to tell them to wear masks anytime they're indoors. But you do have to like take into account like what the percentage of risk is. And at a certain point, you have to like really weigh. It's an ethical question. It's a normative question. And yeah, Japan has a different sensibility about this. Japan, I remember the time I was in Japan in 2014 2 times, and I would see people wearing masks then just on the street.
Yeah,
because allergy season or something like that. It's already a little bit built into the culture. It's not for us, and there are costs to it. There are costs to having kids not be in school for a year and a half. There are costs to, you have to take these costs into account and really look at the scientific evidence for any kind of intervention that's going to do something as drastic, say, as keep kids out of school. And then, like, I think that people got that wrong, which is fine. Like, we've never dealt with this before. But I think that the certainty maybe it could just be like the ghost thing. The certainty on any side in this is, I think, just unjustifiable, because we don't fully know, and nobody has the best track record when it comes to this.
I'm in favor of you choosing to tie it to the ghost belief. So that's
I mean, like, I'll say this.
I'm gonna get
what
fucking slammed.
Yeah.
Save your
What-
emails. I don't want to hear it. Like, I'm
well, let's just
block anyone on Twitter who
I
gives me
feel
shit about this.
I feel
I'm
like
drunk.
like
I'm a little drunk. It's late. It's been a hard week. Fuck all
I
of you.
feel my concern is that, Tamler, your contrarianism is what guides this more than anything else, because surely even you can say, like, I like a serious, in all seriousness,
even you.
that the side that has been doing the science to even collect the data to know whether we're wrong is disproportionately on the left.
Yeah, but although it's kind of all over the place.
Right. So the only reason that we know, for instance, that maybe our masks, cloth masks, didn't work the way that the CDC might have said they did, is because we kept doing studies. Like, to me, it's a no-brainer. Right. Like, we're the ones trying to do the risk assessment, and sure we get it wrong, but there is a mere sort of like impulsive side of the American right that just they use maybe post hoc the like science stuff, but I don't think that that's what's guiding.
Totally, you're right, 100%. I agree that the people doing the science are better than the people who are just rejecting the science out of hand for political reasons, because they feel like they have to. Because they don't trust science in general, or whatever the fuck. But I think that once you have the science, and when the science is, as within a large degree of uncertainty, then it's just not as clear as some people on the left, or liberals, I would say. It's not as clear that we have to take the steps that they think is just so obvious that we have to take. And I think this keeping kids out of school for a year is a great example of that. And the continued insistence on masks, and they were doing masks outside. People still scrub down hotel rooms, and you could be like Christopher, and you could say, you know what, like, that could just save one people. It's not that big a deal. Here in Japan, we scrub down hotels anyway to, stop spreading colds.
Or to get rid of the evidence.
It's fine. But don't pretend that that's obviously the morally right thing to do.
There's plenty about Japan that is not morally right. So just.
Yeah. No, I think COVID was such an interesting one, because nothing was super clear. Even things which became clear, like the efficacy of vaccines, it was not 100% clear. Many things, like how long they would last and things like that. Right. And, so it's been one of those situations, like I've likened it to, like, fighting a war, you know what I mean? Like, they're famously full of mistakes and disasters and working with incomplete information. But, you make the best judgment you can at the time. But I think with a little bit of hindsight now, North America has been adversely affected by the social ideology of hyper-individualism and stuff like that, which is kind of how it looks from over here. Australia, we've had 5,000 deaths in total, right? In total. Sure, we're only about the size of California, but even proportionally, it's like 50 to 1.
And you all live in like little huts, like.
And they're in a concentration camp. Matt's right. Recording from a concentration camp.
That's right. We had the concentration camps.
He's the couple.
The neighbors are like 4 kilometers that way. No. I mean, it's pretty similar. Everyone lives in cities, all that stuff. Now, it's not because, there was some brilliant strategy here or anything like that. There was huge fuck-ups, one after the other. And there was a little bit of luck involved, sure. But, that was perceived, and probably still is perceived in the American right, as Australia's response was completely over the top. Like lockdowns, Australians can't return from overseas, like these quarantine camps. But Australian culture is just a bit more like Japanese, I suppose, a bit more communitarian.
Many
than
people
American
have
culture.
said that.
Yeah.
It is.
Man-
It is.
Australians are like Japanese.
A little bit like Japanese,
Caucasian
like
Japanese.
conformist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
I'm all for collectivism and having a more of a communitarian spirit. I'm all for it. I think the individualism of American, the kind of hyper capitalist, like we're out for ourselves, is like just like leading to the destruction of society. So like I'm totally with you on all of that. I'm just talking about this particular issue and whether we should be open to all sorts of points of view. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The other conciliatory thing I wanted to say is I kind of sympathize where you're coming from with respect to, say, Joe Rogan and stuff like that. Like, you can't just run around canceling and prevent, anytime somebody says something stupid or something you don't like, you can't just run around shutting it down. And it's, we just had Josh Zepps on, an Australian journalist who's, I think coming from a pretty similar progressive liberal place as us, but maybe has more sympathies along that free speech type direction.
He has IDW sympathies.
He does, yeah.
Yeah,
So
but he went on Rogan and did a great job.
He did.
Yeah. And to be absolutely honest, before I listened to Joe Rogan, my attitude was exactly yours. It was like, people get so upset about some little thing, and I know he's not an academic-y type, he doesn't say the right things, but you should pay attention when someone's that popular and can communicate in such a, I guess, is perceived to be so authentic by such a large audience, that maybe you could learn a thing or two from that. And then I listened to and I changed my mind. Yeah. So you might too. You never know.
That's what's so unfair about the terms of this debate. Is that you guys have more information than I do concerning the very topic of it. Yeah.
Matt promised that in our little secret DMs back and forth, he was going to do the pivot to the movie, but he got dragged into it, just did the COVID chat. So
Yeah.
I racked my brain for a segue, Chris.
Yeah. Where was it, man? I even linked getting like cold water.
Well, like, can we talk about the ancient Japanese ritual of getting a hand job from Amy Adams over a sink? Maybe.
Oh yeah, that's a hell of a pivot. That's a hard.
There are things called soap bars in Japan. Yeah.
Soap lands. Yeah. Actually had this was my morning insight. I don't know. I was thinking about this. I think I heard someone talking about Hooters, on some podcast, and then I was thinking that the maid cafes in Japan are like the Hooters in America. Like, if you want Americans to understand what a maid cafe, it is them. When I had that thought, I was like, no, but wait, like Hooters is about, people seeing scantily clad women with large breasts, and maid cafes is about very young looking maids. Like, I'm not sure that's a fantastic comparison for the Japanese.
What's a maid cafe?
Don't act coy, Dave.
No, I genuinely don't know.
We're all adults here, Dave.
Yeah, we've all been to maid cafes.
When a middle-aged businunderstand loves a young woman.
I don't know what a maid cafe is.
Oh God, I've unveiled something bad about it. Look, when every academic comes to Japan, they would always come to the lab where I was based in Hokkaido, or come over, and when the Japanese people were away, they were always like, "So, Chris, are there maid cafes?" And the other question was panty vending machines, right? These were the two questions everybody asked. Like, are there really? I don't think they want to go there. They just want to, no. But the maid cafe is it's like a cafe. You go and you get drinks and stuff, but the clientele are almost all middle-aged or older than that, Japanese men, and the servers are young, usually just out of high school, maybe early university age girls in like frilly maid costumes who talk to you in Japanese as a using language along like, welcome home master, like please sit, and like when they pour your drink, you need to say like moi moi in order to make them stop pouring the milk and stuff. So that's a maid cafe.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
That's the
I mean, they'll wear masks if you ask them.
They do wear masks. They
There's
do
a lot
wear
of fucked up
masks.
things about Japan.
That's the if you want a discomforting experience in Japan, go to a maid cafe, because it's like, might think, oh, that would be an odd anthropological experience. It's like, it's just uncomfortable. You're just in a pure state of discomfort the entire time you're there. So there's something, if something to look forward to next time you visit Japan.
Here's one final question. Do you need to wear special boxers in Japan to get jerked off by Amy Adams over the sink?
That's that ancient tradition. I've not partaken, so I can't comment. But there's a lot of ritualized things in Japan, so it wouldn't surprise me.
BYOB.
I just yeah.
For the people who haven't seen The Master, the context
Yeah.
for what we are talking about with Amy Adams, they must just think like we really have a lot of shared fantasies about Amy Adams jerking us off. So
Well, we do now.
yes. So
All right. Let's
master
turn to the
map.
master. Speaking of the master,
maybe that can all cut.
Good
We just
job.
do that.
Somebody needed to.
How should we begin? Do we need to summarize the plot? What's the format here?
Yeah, you
did
guys
hear
are
you guys are experts.
good at
so I
this.
think
You are
the big-
pros.
Yeah, I think you guys sort of give a bit of a
One of the good
synopsis,
things about being on someone else's podcast
Is they do it.
we'd have to do that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
The Master, 2012 film by Paul Thomas Anderson about wastrel, played by Joaquin Phoenix, a kind of alcoholic returning from the Vietnam War, I guess it was. And
No,
then,
World War II.
sorry,
World
World
War
War II. Okay, look at the. Oh yeah, it would have been. In
Really
19
did your research there.
Really
Yeah. Shut up!
careful
So-
viewing of the
get it.
movie.
You don't get to
Also,
critique my summary.
I love how you pronounce Joaquin. You called him
What's wrong?
whacking
Joaquin.
Phoenix. It's just because he does.
Oh,
He's
is
whacking in the early
racism.
scenes.
This
Yeah.
is bigotry, Dave. Just because I'm Irish,
It's
you
bigotry
think-
not to pronounce a Spanish word properly.
Okay,
You anthropologist piece of shit.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin.
Joaquin Phoenix is playing a wastrel coming back from an undetermined war, possibly World War II, and he falls in with a kind of cult movement which is extremely reminiscent of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard, and the movie kind of documents their relationship over, I think, a couple of years, and it was widely celebrated by critics. It didn't win it. I think a lot of people won Oscars for their acting in it. Oh, and the cult leader is Philip Seymour Hoffman, who is jacked off by his wife Amy Adams, as we've already established, a key plot point that happens in the movie. So there were like Oscars awarded for the acting in it, but it didn't win Best Picture. And it's well regarded, but not that well known. I think that's fair to say, right?
Oddly, because it was so critically acclaimed that year, but it sort of just dropped off. Like There Will Be Blood is just a much more well-known
Idolized.
movie. Yeah, and idolized. And I don't know if it's because
I have a theory as to why that's the case.
Huh.
It's because There Will Be Blood is just much more entertaining. It's just much more entertaining.
I
Did you guys? Can we start this by just no clever analysis. Just did you enjoy this movie?
Should I
Okay.
go first before they give the proper answers? Because I'll
Yeah.
summarize that. I I I can't say I enjoyed the movie. Like I thought it was well made. The acting was good. The cinematography was very impressive. But I left it with like a feeling of kind of what was the point, which I guess some people like, but I felt like unsatisfied by the at the end. Although I recognize the craft. That's my take. And Matt, you before the professionals take over.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, for me, this was a good movie in all the respects that you'd normally, measure a movie. Like the acting was tremendously good, the lighting and the cinematography was so good. There were interesting ideas in it, but I did not enjoy it, and I left. The movie ended with me feeling unsatisfied and slightly bored. Um, so
So
This
tell
would
us why
be a
we're
great
wrong.
discussion.
yeah.
Um, I I loved it, and I think maybe it's one of those kinds of movies where you do have to be in a certain frame of mind to watch it. Like I was actually surprised at how not bored I was because I know what you mean. Like there are these long shots. There isn't, there's not much by way of plot really. I mean, there are events that drive the characters, but it's a different kind of narrative. It's really just this meanderings of the Joaquin Phoenix character. Um, but I was sort of mesmerized by it, and I'm not even really that like Joaquin Phoenix bothers me a little bit. There's when he gets too Joaquin-y, like I get a little bit grated by his acting style. But Philip Seymour Hoffman
Mhm.
and him sort of trading blows sort of as actors, I found mesmerizing. And I thought that there was, yeah, it was this, maybe because I've been doing movie episodes for a long time with Tamler now. I found that it's fertile ground for interpretation in not a bullshit way, but like a real, like what's going on with these two men kind of way. Like I found it interesting.
Yeah, I also really love this movie. I think it was uh, the first time I saw it back in 2012. I really also loved it, but then never really went back to it like a lot of movies that if I really like a movie, I'll just keep watching it. And I never went back to it. I've always been trying to get my daughter to watch it, but then there's always something else that are like, all right, let's watch that instead. And um, so I was a little bit wary going into this rewatch. Like, there's got to be a reason why I keep kind of putting off rewatching it. And then I watched it today in preparation for this, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, I just was fully on board with it because it's so beautifully made and it's got such an energy, and the sound and the score and the filmmaking is so beautiful, and there's so many just set pieces and long takes, and yeah, the really good performances. I also have a little problem with Joaquin Phoenix, like Dave does.
Me
But
too.
I thought the way he is, like, it's good for this character for us to be a little bit like, there's something about him that's just bugging us, because he's so uncomfortable in his own skin as a character that my natural reaction to him as an actor actually, I thought, helped the movie. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't totally get it, so I'm with you, Matt, on that. Like, I'm not sure I fully get what it's trying to say, but I think in some ways that's good. Like, that's something like maybe we can try to talk about and we'll get some clarity on that.
Yeah, so why don't we start with these two main characters, yeah? Because that's a pretty interesting part of the movie. So you have this Lancaster Dodd character who's the master, the head of this Scientology inspired movement, and he plays against Freddie Quell, who's this kind of, he's like an animal, like drifter, jack of all trades, but and so they're obviously contrasts, right? They're like total opposites. The Lancaster Dodd character is sort of avuncular. He's he's a smooth talker. He projects superficially anyway this degree of I guess sort of comfort, I suppose. Like he's got a sort of folksy charm. Like he says those sort of folksy things like leave your worries for a while. They'll still be here when you get back. Sort of soothing the wild beast that Joaquin is. But it comes across as a bit thin, doesn't it? Like it's got a faux folksiness and also this faux intellectualism. Like one of the best lines, of course, is where he introduces himself and he says, I do many, many things. I'm a writer, a doctor, a nuclear physicist, a theoretical philosopher, but above all, I am a man.
It was very Eric Weinstein.
Very Eric Weinstein. Yeah. But so Freddie Quell's like the complete opposite, right? He's just all over the place. You just feel uncomfortable looking at him. He's whacking off on the beach at the beginning of the movie.
He adopted this like hunch too. Like he's just like his posture's terrible. It's very like he lost weight like he did for the Joker, so his body is weird looking. He contorts it. He often does this thing where he puts his hands on his hips and he is like hunched over like an old man, in his old timey pants. And it's just like, he looks uncomfortable. And
I was wondering if this movie served as the inspiration for him being chosen as the Joker character, because it had a very, like, I haven't watched the Joker, but from all the clips and whatnot I've seen of it, the movement style and the kind of not comfortable in his own skin is something which Joaquin Phoenix does in pretty much all of his roles, even in Gladiator when he was, the kind of handsome young like emperor. He has a vibe about him that emanates discomfort, and it suits this role very well because like the characters. It seems like the character's point is that he's not comfortable in his own skin, and you're not supposed to feel comfort when he's in a scene, like a kind of uneasiness.
He's broken too as a character. I think like he's just something about the war, we never find out what, has just kind of shattered his sense of meaning and purpose, and he doesn't know why he's alive. And I'm not sure if I totally agree with Matt about the there's some kind of superficiality to Philip Seymour, to Lancaster Dodd. Like I think he might buy what he's selling himself to some degree, and that I think that he's good at it at times. Like the stuff, the first scene, the first little, what do they call them? The
processing.
Yeah. The first processing session with Freddie is like, he's good at it. Like he's getting him to remember something that's really deeply important to him, and kind of taking him back in time almost to relive those moments. And even with the woman, when the skeptic, probably your guys' favorite character in the whole movie, even in that scene with the woman, like we don't see the processing, but clearly he had some sort of really good effect on that woman. She seems relaxed, and sure, her back doesn't hurt anymore. So I think he's got something, he's doing something. And I think actually
this is so on brand for you, Tamler.
The way I read him,
this is surprising, Dick.
The way I read him is like, someone who has claimed to see Jesus and probably didn't, but at least believes that they did. Like they really feel like in Benedetta, did you guys see Benedetta, the new Paul Verhoeven film? It's about a woman in like the 16th century who kept having these visions. I read that it's ambiguous, like with this. She believes she had those visions, even though she didn't.
So before getting the full retort of the gurus, I off-brand had the same feeling about Lancaster Dodd character. Not so. I went into this movie thinking, well, if this is based on L. Ron Hubbard, there's going to be a deep criticism of whether or not any of this stuff worked, and that there would be some sort of animosity. And I was surprised at how the Lancaster Dodd character really did seem to have a calming effect on the people around him. And I thought afterwards, well, I think Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't have the animosity that I think he might have had to Scientology. Now that processing thing, as you guys probably know, is based on the very real Scientology practice of auditing. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever visited a Scientology thing. Like it's, I don't know whether it works or not, but it is super duper. Yeah, exactly. When you hold the e-meters or whatever. It is, I think there's just enough psychology in some of that stuff as to produce a positive effect, or else it wouldn't have the staying power that it does. That whatever it is, there is maybe some, you're given permission from an authority figure to talk about your past. And by the way, if the scene where he's like given the Rorschach ink blot test, this is also just straight out of the Scientology page of L. Ron Hubbard's origin story, thinking psychiatry was such bullshit that he could actually provide a better system. Like, I don't know about the trillions of years shit, but I think he believes that he's doing it for the sake of helping those people. But you guys seem to have a different.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting reading. I have quite a bit to say in regards to the way that the Scientology is presented. But Matt, I want, in case I do you just disjustice, do you want to respond first about like the presentation of Lancaster Dodd?
Yeah, look, I think it's important to distinguish, the movie character and Scientology, right? There's big influences there, but I agree with you that I think the Dodd character was presented really quite sympathetically. Like in the movie, he was not like a toxic character. Like he didn't see too much, manipulation or nasty stuff. I think I wasn't saying that. My feeling of the character was that, and this is not influenced by my prejudice against Scientology, which I hate, is that he was kind of like weirdly like a lost soul. Like even though the contrast was meant to be that the wacky character was all over the shop and this sort of wild animal just following this sort of self-destructive kind of path, the Lancaster Dodd character was so smooth and superficially so self-possessed, and seems like he knows exactly the right way, but there was just a hollowness to it all. Like when you saw him with his wife and they were alone, he was not happy. And when he was speaking publicly and so on, there was this kind of, and obviously the mask slips at several points as well, and he loses his shit when he gets challenged or he gets caught in an inconsistency.
I love when he yells at that guy, but the guy from Silicon Valley, like this amazing actor. Are you gonna play that clip of him chewing out the?
Yeah, I have it here, and I think I can let you hear it. The pig fuck one.
Yeah.
John Moore.
Mr. Moore, if I may.
John Moore.
Is there something frightening to you about the cause's travels into the past?
Frightening?
Yes.
No.
What scares you so much about traveling into the past, sir?
I'm not
Are you
frightened.
afraid that we might discover that our past has been reshapen, perverted, and perhaps what we think we know of this world is false information?
Time travel does not frighten me, sir, because it's not possible. What does frighten me is the possibility of some poor soul with leukemia
There are
coming
dangers
to
in
you.
traveling in and out of time as we understand it. But it's not unlike traveling down a river, you see. You travel down the river, round the bend, look back, and you cannot see around the bend, can you? But that does not mean it is not there, does it? But certain clubs would like us to think that a truth, I say truth, uncovered should stay hidden.
I belong to no club, and if you're unwilling to allow any discussion...
No, this isn't a discussion, it's a grilling. There's nothing I can do for you if your mind has been made up. You seem to know the answers to your questions. Why do you ask?
I'm sorry you're unwilling to defend your beliefs in any kind of rational
Oh,
way.
if you already know the answers to your questions, then why ask? Pig fuck!
Yeah, that is the least flattering of his moments, and if that's all you heard, he is a charlatan.
So
I disagree. I think like that.
I know you
that's-
would.
Like he is just a fucking reply guy on Twitter, like John Moore. I should have just played that clip when you guys were like grilling me about ghosts in the fucking first segment.
I wish you had, because curing leukemia is exactly the kind of thing you'd endorse with time travel.
that I wasn't going to be unfair and suggest that he is you, Tamler, in a stronger fashion, but you did it yourself, so it's okay. But I have a slightly different read, I think, than the three of you, because and I wonder if it's partly because I have maybe more, I'm assuming, like more of an interest in the Scientology and the familiarity with it. So I read quite a lot of the material as critiques, like even the processing scene, Tamler, that you mentioned, where he does get the person to go back and visit the painful experiences, right, and identify having sex with his aunt as this kind of important moment in his life. But I read that as illustrating that the guy has skills, but these are skills which enable people to become vulnerable and manipulated. And if you remember, he was recording the conversation, right, which is a thing that Scientologists do when people are divulging these traumatic life experiences, which can then be used in the future as a means to, prevent them from voicing criticism. So I took that scene as like showing, yes, he has the ability to elicit real emotion and real experiences from people, but it's very much in a manipulative context. And the later scenes with the that we just heard, I got the impression that what he wanted to say is not that he doesn't have skills and that he isn't charismatic, but that these are fundamentally manipulative and empty. And the kind of clearest illustration of that is when his son is talking to Joaquin Phoenix's character, Freddie, and says, it's bullshit, right? Like he's making it all up as it goes along. Like I took that to be, Paul Thomas Anderson just inserting the point of view to remind the audience that like there's no there.
Can I ask you a question? So because the way I read the movie is just the movie. Like I put out of my mind anything about Scientology and anything about L. Ron Hubbard. So like when you say, like, do you do that? Because when you say that he's recording it and he can use that against them, like there's no evidence that he does that or would do that in the movie, right?
No, but there's too many, like, so I thought the inclination was just going to be that Scientology is the, inspiration, but it's just a setup for this character study between these two people. But the parallels were too strong. Like there was the the Sea Org organization, right, out on the boat. Then there's processing, which is very clearly the auditing. And then there was also
all the sci-fi shit, you know, like the trillions
the
of years old.
trillions of
Definitely
years, the
based
souls.
on that
Yeah.
character. It's more of
Yeah.
like an interpretive question of like, is it just inspired by that character, but you're supposed to take the like Lancaster Dodd as Lancaster Dodd and not import any of your beliefs about L. Ron Hubbard aside from that. Like,
But
that's the question.
Yeah, that's the part where I think it's impossible to do that, because if you wanted to make Lancaster Dodd completely divorced from L. Ron Hubbard, yeah, or not even completely divorced, you know, just highlight a couple of similarities. You don't have to draw such tight parallels in the life and the doctrines and the organization and what they're doing and the whole, like the way the processing is talked about is very much the same as auditing and Dianetics, right? The way it's presented as a scientific. So I felt that like a little bit, Paul Thomas Anderson, I read some stuff about the movie afterwards, and he was kind of having his cake and eating it by saying, you know, that it was just inspired and he wasn't really wanting to talk about Scientology. But if that was the choice, it felt like you could have made more distinctions between this group and early Scientology, because the parallels were so strong. It made it hard for me not to think they were intentional.
Yeah, you know, what I was gonna say is, well, two things. One, a question, but I'll say what I was gonna say first is, it read to me like the inspiration to create this character was clearly L. Ron Hubbard, and it might have even started off as a stronger critique of Scientology, but it seemed not to end that way. And I almost think, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson's the writer and the director. I almost feel like as the story unfolded, he had a different story to tell. And one thing for your listeners, if you go into this thinking that this is going to be like a biopic of L. Ron Hubbard or something, you're way, you know, it's way off.
No.
And so what that leads me to is this question, which I had a very strong, like, sort of dissonance about this because of the Scientology stuff, is, do you think that Hoffman truly cared? Like, because to what end is he manipulating Joaquin Phoenix? Like, I left the movie thinking he truly cared about that character.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think he was manipulating that character at all. In fact,
He might have wanted to fuck him, but
well, that's we're going to get to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But Matt, before you do, I have to say that I disagree, because like I agreed that there was a real relationship, and the things that we'll, I think, move on to talk about very shortly about the relationship between the two men and the nature of it is important, but the real affection that I think emerges towards, you know, the latter half of the movie, and it's very clear at the end. Did you not read those scenes, for example, where Freddie is kind of offering, you know, kind of directly suggesting that he's going to attack the critics violently of him, and the half-hearted way that he, you know, kind of says, "Oh no, you beast, you bold boy, don't do that," because it struck to me that like he saw the value in having Freddie as a kind of enforcer type figure within the organization. So this might be me layering, you know, like my interpretation on top, but I saw him as being presented as he's calculating and he is manipulating people into his orbit and using them, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have, you know, these mixed motivations, like potentially attraction and so on. But I felt very much that there was a manipulative aspect to why he wants him in the orbit.
I had a similar question about that scene in particular, where he's kind of chastising.
You naughty boy.
Yeah,
you dirty beast.
Yeah, but like, but maybe at the same time it is a little half-hearted. I think you could read it that way, or I think you could read it as like, no, we don't do this, because at every point he doesn't seem like he's advocating violence. And even when your boy John Moore or whatever that guy got under his skin, like I think he regretted that he got out of control like that, and he let that guy get a rise out of him. So I don't know. My feeling was that you could read it the way you do, Chris, but like you don't have to. And I think that's kind of the thing that's this movie is really good at, is leaving a lot of that stuff open to question.
I have just one question on that, and then like move on.
Wait, Matt's been trying to talk for the last 3 turns.
Sorry, Matt.
Aren't you lovely,
promise.
David? Aren't you nice? I need you come along to every recording session with
I
Chris.
listen to you guys.
Look,
I sometimes I'm like, let Matt fucking talk.
I promise I'll shut up, but I have to ask Tamler so when he attacked the guy, the John Brown, the guy that you hate, the one you wanted to physically attack, was did you think that
The guy that you guys want to jerk off over?
yeah, that guy, my hero, the anti-hero of the movie. Like, did you think that he was like actually upset that they went and beat him up for like criticizing him? Or
I do, because it's not a good look either way. Like, even if he's pretty like just manipulative and instrumental in his thinking, like I don't think that's what he wants. There's not enough in the movie to make me think that this is actually, it's more that Amy Adams' character, who has a little Lady Macbeth in her and seemed like she wanted that to happen, which the way I read the movie is that's why he did it, is because I think Amy Adams wanted it to happen.
Well, I agree with Tamler on that one. I think he's ambivalent at best, and it also permits multiple interpretations. Actually, thank you, David, for helping me talk, because I wanted to talk to criticize something you said, so you're going to regret that. But I kind of disagree a bit about it being effective. You know what I mean? You're sort of, putting aside the thousands of years of aliens and so on, the actual methods and so on being effective, because that's true, but it's true in a very kind of superficial way. Like, those methods, those interpersonal things are always effective. And a little experience
in the hands of the right person, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Like I've told this story to Chris, but really briefly. Like, I was in Japan actually when I went to visit a friend of a friend, and she was into color therapy, and there was all these bottles of different colored oils, and you choose a couple of colors that appeal to you, and they represent your future and your present,
you'd like
and so on. You'd love this, yeah. And the practitioner sits there across from you and like stares into your eyes and holds your hands and sort of touches your arm and shoulder, and they talk about you for like 30 minutes or so. And so I went along to that, being the skeptic guy, and I loved it. It was you could feel the power of the interpersonal experience, and you can see how all of these cults, all of these quack kind of things, they always generate a genuine, in inverted commas, response, because we're monkeys, and that sort of shit works on us. Yeah.
So, allow me to retort. I don't think I disagree with you. I think though what you're saying, what I'm saying is simply that what the active ingredient is in color therapy is clearly not the colors, it's the connection. And I think that the method, the process that they're using in this movie is more on the face of it what it says it is. It is forcing an interpersonal connection, right? So it is simply saying, now you tell me some vulnerable shit. No, I'm going to ask you again. I'm going to ask you again. There's no pretense that there is like there's not even like, because I think psychics do the same thing, right? They forge this connection, which is pseudo, like it's a
Hold on.
falsely. Yeah. I mean, if one chooses to ignore the thousands of years of evidence, but this one, it's more laid bare. I think, I don't think this is good therapeutic practice by any means, but I do think that it's, I guess I would call it like a ice breaking exercise on steroids.
Yeah.
right?
You
It's
know-
forcing.
And let me add to that like it's all well and good to say there, I'm sure it's true. There are better ways to make this kind of connection that don't involve a lot of this spooky shit. But that isn't happening to Freddie Quell, right? Like, so this is what he has. This is what's on offer for a lot of these people. It's that or nothing. And so they get that, and that is really important. It's not like the other option that the movie seems to lay out is like, tell me what this thing is that looks obviously like a vagina.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
That's the
No,
other
exactly.
option
Yeah.
that they have is
Yeah.
that.
And can I just, there's back to the discussion of whether or not Philip Seymour Hoffman was trying to sick his dog, like whether he was trying to do this or not. I actually read these interactions as reflecting something different. I don't think that he really wanted Joaquin Phoenix, Freddy, to go kick ass. I think that what is seeming like indecision is that throughout this whole movie, I think he's trying to figure out why he likes Freddy. And I think one of the things is that this guy has his impulsiveness is something that Dodd doesn't have and that he kind of likes. I think his lust for life is too positive, but the whole thing that he's calling humans animalistic, right? He hates the fart, but he laughs at it. And he ends up concluding that laughter is really important about, right? But I think he is stuck in believing that we should rise above our animal nature, but there is something that is so appealing about his Freddy's animalistic nature that he's attracted to.
Yeah, that's totally true. At several points in the movie, they really emphasize the animal nature of
and I
Freddy.
think he can't even tell whether or not he wants Freddy sexually. I think it's unclear. Yeah,
but I think you're right. It's interesting that the self concept of Dodd is that, and this aligns perfectly with Scientology, is that idea of ascending to this sort of spiritual realm. There's this that is and completely divorced from your animal nature. But like I was saying, I just picked up lots of hints that he wasn't happy. That Dodd
absolutely, he's miserable. But I think Freddy is showing him that he's miserable about something, that he's given up this part of life.
Yeah, and kind of the only times you see him laugh.
Yeah,
that line that he says at the end, where Freddy is kind of leaving him, and he says, "If you figure out a way to live without serving a master, any master, then let the rest of us know. For you'd be the first," something like that. Like, I think he sees in Freddy something that, even though he's a completely broken, aimless soul, like he sees in him some like, how can you actually live in this way where you're not beholden to some source of meaning. And that is appealing to him because he also feels lost too. Yeah.
He treats also his, I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, just to extend on that. So Dodd is kind of the leader of the cult, right? He's the master, but he's
or
kind of,
is he?
I know this is where I'm going. It's full of schemes and organizations and boats, and then they move to London and they're going to set up things there, and you can just you get a sense of all of this sort of ego, with the sort of Freudian ego type strategizing that sort of dominates every little thing that they do. And he's kind of, and his wife is the full-on believer and a kind of a powerful character. And in a way, he's kind of, it's like the tail's wagging the dog. He's a little bit of a prisoner of this construct that he's created.
There was an element in the character that of Freddy that I find interesting, was that while he was presented this kind of animalistic force, right? Like when you saw from his perspective, took me quite a while to work out that's what's happening when you saw suddenly all the women being naked in one scene. I actually thought for a while, so is this showing like Dodd commanded all women to become
Oh
naked.
yeah, I
But
was confused.
Yeah.
I watched that scene 3 times
yeah, just to,
or more.
just to
Yeah.
try and get
Not for the boobs, but you know.
No.
Is there like an accepted interpretation? My interpretation is it's clearly from his perspective, and he's an
Yeah.
asshole, but
I think
that's
the camera work is what gives us that. I think that the director is trying to tell us that. But there is
Yeah.
something I want to talk about that scene when Chris is done. Yeah.
So like you know, I think that scene, various other ones like are presenting the parallel and the imagery of like, you know, he's an animal, he's a dog, that's very clear. But there's also this like weird part, and I liked it because it reminded me of this short story I heard when I was at school in Northern Ireland called The Potching Maker, right? The people who brew their home alcohol. And in that story, it was a school teacher, I think. I looked it up, and it was like a short story from the 70s. But that like skill he has, right, where he's making like these kind of potions out of deadly things like paint thinners and so on, but the camera work presents it as like, in a sense, he has some sort of science or mechanical skill, right? Like a kind of like an artisan to make these drinks. And I can't remember how Dodd refers to them, but it had this nature that he has some part to him which is, you know, like proficient in a skill, albeit it's brewing alcohol.
Well, and I totally agree. And remember, this is the thing that first attracts Dodd to him. I think there is, on the one hand, he's obviously a bootlegger. We can read it straight that way. You know, his father's alcoholic and he learned this skill. But it's almost like he has this elixir of life that Dodd wants in on. And when he asks him how he does it, he won't tell him. So it's almost like a wizard or a shaman. Like he's able to craft this elixir, and that's what draws him in. Like he sees, along with everything else, he sees that Freddy has something that he wants, that he's denied himself for so long.
and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is, you know, Amy Adams, Peggy Dodd is one of the things that she first asks him is to stop boozing. You know, you can read this as like, stop your magic, the magic that you have on my husband. And which gets me to that scene. That scene, if you look at Amy Adams in that scene, I think it's the most brilliant piece of acting in the whole film. Is you're distracted by these, you know, naked women. I think you're seeing it from the perspective of Freddy. You see Amy Adams catch the camera so we can see it's Freddy. And she does this thing where she notices the way that Freddy is looking, but then she looks up at Dodd and then looks right back at Freddy as if to notice that there's something going on between in that dynamic. And then that's where right after she goes and jerks him off and she says, you could do whatever you want, but not this. Like,
Yeah,
I think that there's an illusion there. To
Nobody that I
chemistry.
know, nobody that that other people I know.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So that scene, Matt and I were actually talking about it, but like, and I think there is like in lots of the things, there's ambiguity, right? Because it's not explicit that it's referencing like homosexual urges. It could be just
right.
Not at
but
all.
It could be 3 different things at the same time, right?
Yeah. But did you guys read it that there was an like a homoerotic well, going both ways or one way, or how did you read that relationship?
Actually, I read it less like that, even though like it's kind of it's almost like begging you to interpret that way. I read it more as like a father-son kind of relationship. And
Well, that's not inconsistent.
no, I guess
Oedipus.
well, I don't know what kind of like family you grew up in.
It was only his
Oedipus
aunt.
was just interested in his mom. He killed his dad.
He wasn't fucking. He was only fucking his aunt.
Yeah, he was only fucking his aunt. That's right.
But
I guess my point is like I think that's the thing that it seems like Joaquin Phoenix or Freddy is hungering for, but at the same time can't commit to. But yeah. So I didn't come down on the clearly this is two men that are trying to get with each other but can't bring themselves to admit that. But I could see that reading too.
Now, I'm with you, Tamler, and I don't think it's very important whether or not there's some sort of physical
Right.
thing going on
Yeah.
there. It's mainly, but because what's clear is that, like, his wife doesn't approve of him, and other people in the movement don't approve of the presence of this guy, and it's Lancaster Dodd who wants him there and appreciates him, and his wife in particular is kind of jealous. Just, and it doesn't have nothing to do with physicality at all, but I mean. This is the contradiction, right? Like, he's meant to be the cult leader, and Freddy's meant to be the one that's sort of fallen into it and is the loyal dog, But it's kind of, Freddy is not, like, he's too sociopathic or something to actually really care that much. He
He's a
drifts
little
into it.
Yeah. He's a little touched, as they say in the South. He's like not all there, right?
Not all there, yeah. So it's actually the master that has this strong need and thing for Freddy, and Freddy's more casual about it. And so Freddy leaves, right, on the motorcycle. He just burns off, and it's like, which was hard to understand for a little while. And then it's Lancaster Dodd at the very end who sort of, begs Freddy to come back, and really, at the very final scene, he's telling Freddy, basically, just don't leave. You have to stay. If you leave again, then I can't handle. Don't come back. So
he's conflicted, and I also read that as sort of him. What you see when he's driving off in the distance, he's sort of cheering for him to leave, but not. But he also wants him.
He said he's driving fast, like, good for him.
Yeah, good boy. Yeah.
Good boy.
You'll see. I agree absolutely, Matt, that it's not even important really for the movie. What's important is that there is some sort of dynamic there that's intriguing. If you see right before that, the scene where Philip Seymour Hoffman is, dancing and singing, he is the scene right before that is he's telling the audience that he's in love, and you'll see Joaquin Phoenix looks embarrassed. Like he has this sort of like look as if he thinks he might be talking about him. And maybe this is me imputing something on it, but I think there's a reason for him giving that look. On the face of it, he's talking about his wife. But I think this ties into the whole, she's jealous, she might not know what. And in this era, maybe any homosexual feelings were so repressed that not even they themselves know what's going on between the two men. They might not even realize what's going on. But
and he didn't seem in love with Amy Adams.
No,
with Peggy.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So when he's saying that is a fair. Way
but when
to
he says
understand
that, he says, I'm in love. We've all been in love. But he says it in, again, this kind of hollow tone.
Yeah, it was very much like he's a pastor at that point.
There's
here's
the only thing I wanted to say related to Dave's point was that something that supports that reading, Dave, is that the indulgence that he later shows Freddy when everybody else is like, this guy's no good, he's dangerous, I think he's a CIA informant, and you get to see the frustration of them trying to make him better, but it is very much like Dodd says, okay, I take all of those things, but he still sees something in Freddy, right? So I think that kind of fits with that reading, that he has some devotion to him that the others don't, whether it's love or not. So that's all.
And then they wrestle on the front lawn.
Yeah, which is kind of one of the only times you see Dodd being like happy.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Who do you think this is more about between the two of them? Because, like, I in some ways I think, like, you're tempted to see this to focus on Dodd, but it's in a lot of ways a movie about Freddie Quell, and more broadly speaking, the kind of person that might be drawn to this kind of community, and might because it's also an interesting question. He can't hold a job, he can't stick to anything, but he does stick with them for much longer than we see him capable of sticking to anything else. So like, what is it about him and his experience that draws him to this these
Well,
people?
actually, I gotta dispute your premise there, because I don't think he is that drawn to them. He fell, he fell into them. He boarded the boat on a whim. He sort of gets kicked out and is unsuitable for all these other contexts. And there they feed him, they give him clothes, he gets to go to a party and drink.
He says
And so, of course,
everybody's very nice to me here. Like
Oh,
that's
yeah.
all. That's his,
yeah, yeah. So it's like, of course he's going to stay. He'll stay until they kick him out, just like he stayed in the
he
other
doesn't
situation.
just get kicked out. Like he in one case he like attacks a guy in a mall, and in another case he
Well, there are reasons for
kill-
getting kicked out.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like he
Actually-
doesn't do things like that in the community.
I had a question related to that like I couldn't read it myself about the intention. The like two parts were, one, why he attacked the guy in the job when he was the photographer, like why he started being aggressive to him. I thought like maybe something to do with commanders and war or something like that, maybe. But the second one was oh god, it slipped my mind now. It'll come back, but there was a scene that I couldn't interpret, like, oh yeah, that's it, where he gave the alcohol to the man, right? And you've seen before that he was talking with the man and he said, "You look like my father." And then they start accusing him of poisoning him. And I read that like, I thought that he had intentionally poisoned him, but Matt didn't read it like that. And I was kind of curious what you guys felt about that, and also the scene where he attacked the guy, because I didn't really understand why, except just he's a weird guy.
Go ahead, Tamler.
I was just gonna say I didn't see that as intentional, but maybe reckless what he did, and yeah, I think this is somebody who really just has trouble maintaining any kind of connection, even temporary, of like, I'm going to take your picture for 10 minutes, like he really can't do it. He also has clearly like sexual problems, impotence, that is something that is, just a general part of his social dysfunction. And that's why I would say that I think, even though he ends up leaving them multiple times, there is something about this community that I would say is distinct from when he tries to blend in with other areas of life.
So I have formulated a mini theory for your evaluation here in listening to what you guys are saying. One of the things that I think I read in a review was sort of the connection with the theme of family in this movie. The old man that he kills, or causes to die, he says, "You're like my father. You remind me of my father," right? And then that guy dies. The man in the mall, in the department store, is, he's asking him if he's a family man and if he's there for his wife, and he attacks him. I think he's looking for and unable to find a father figure because he's so destructive. And note, the father that he was trying out, he killed. It seems as if Dodd is, by taking the elixir and surviving, not dying, he is sort of shown that he's going to take on that role. And I think that one of the things, like one of the reasons he leaves, is as he has adopted this surrogate family in a way that it doesn't seem he ever had one. And he plays out an adolescence and at the end of adolescence, as anthropologists will tell us, we leave, right? Like he's actually leaving of his own accord for the first fucking time in his life, right? He's not getting shipped off to war. He's not getting run out of the cabbage farm for killing. He's not getting
Actually-
kicked out of the department store. I
Holy
think
shit,
he has finally found a surrogate father.
Yeah,
I like the
totally-
movie
that's-
now.
Yeah, I like that. So
Yeah,
that
Dave
totally went.
pretends to be a Philistine, but he actually has some insightful like film analysis.
I was sitting there going, oh, but
That's
you know,
what it is.
so the time that he actually goes back to the girl's house, the girl that
Yeah.
he left,
Yeah.
and unsuccessfully reconnects with her. That's kind of what a young adult does after they leave home, right?
Yeah,
actually,
right.
He's actually ready
Exactly.
to say, yeah, okay.
And when he starts to do the processing at the end in the like sex scene, right, where he's trying to get the woman to do the
Yeah.
processing, that like, but that fits. That's kind of what you're saying.
Very
that he's
bizarre.
now
Yeah,
become
he's now
the
the father.
master.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
But you
the
don't
master-
feel
he's the master
hopeful.
of that pussy.
Yeah, it's not good. I agree, Tamler. It wasn't like, oh, he
But-
mastered this.
But does he? Do you get the sense that he's finally able to have sex in that scene? I think so, right?
well,
It might be for the I don't
well,
know.
I didn't know about. I hadn't twigged about the impotence, but
Yeah,
I
what's
have
the
to,
but-
impotence? Where
but-
where
well,
are you
but-
getting the impotence?
Well, just like he always is like with the girl at the department store, and he kind of falls asleep when they're going out to eat, and then he has these like kind of pre-sex things where he's like, let's fuck to the
Yeah.
transcribers who are
Right.
record. But we never actually see him able to take any of
Oh,
those
yeah.
to
Well,
it does. Well,
complete-
to support that,
Yeah.
Damla, it does slip out during.
Yeah,
the,
but he says put it back in, which means that it can.
the
we don't know
mechanics,
if it was
we need to
successfully.
think
Yeah.
about
we, don't-
this.
we need a close up to get to the bottom of this. Yeah.
But you're right, Tamler, that he has pre-sex, and whether or not he's a stud at the end there, it is the first time we see him really do it.
Yeah.
And it in some and he's lumbering
were
at it, and
waiting.
his processing sucks, right? His idea of processing is like a real stripped out, he's not really doing it right, but he is finally like his own.
I also, it's really irrelevant now. It's so irrelevant, but I gotta mention it anyway. That like the stuff where you were talking about the techniques that they kind of work, right? That they break down, even if it isn't, it's better than the fucking ink blot Rorschach test. I also took that as an indictment of those techniques, because it seemed to me to be saying that yes, these do work, but like getting people to sit opposite each other and stare at each other, and like that scene where they're supposed to tell truths to each other, like these are
Yeah.
all things. I don't know if Scientologists specifically do this. I think they do, but like they're associated with cult movements, right? That they have these techniques that force intimacy, and that it works. It really works, because like they've Tamler, they've done psychology studies where people have ticked Likert boxes where if you force people to reveal secrets, intimate secrets, afterwards they feel more, like close. Like it's because that's what humans do when they become close to someone, they reveal information. So if you artificially create that, and I felt the movie was saying that these guys are good at doing that. They intuitively or not, they understand how these manipulative things work, and they're using them to draw people in. This could be me
Yeah.
layering my own interpretation on top.
Well,
No,
it's
I
interesting.
agree.
Yeah, it's interesting because whether or not you call it manipulative has just simply to do with whether or not you find the ends appropriate, right? Because you're right, like there is actually like in relationship, in social psychology, relationship, they use this method for to get two people in the lab to get to know each other really fast, right? It's like a whole technique where you divulge information to each
science.
other. It's and it works. And so the thing is, no, I don't think any of us here would disagree with the claim that cults are effective at giving people, these tools to bond with other humans. What our judgment is about whether it's fake or not, it has more to do with whether or not we think that the goals of that bonding are manipulative rather than whether or not people have bonded.
It's effective. And also, I think that there's a way to look at this and say, well, all this is doing is just normal intimacy, and it would be much healthier for him to have this intimacy without all the bullshit. But clearly that's not in the cards for him. He's not, he has no opportunity to do that in a way that wouldn't involve these kind of cult-like aspects. So I think it's really asking the question of, for people who are truly lost and aimless and who feel like their existence is kind of a joke, is this something that is actually helpful or beneficial for them, in spite of the fact that there's all this kind of metaphysics behind it that is crazy? Is it still, it's still better than living this atomized life of bouncing from job to job and never being able to actually have sex, even when, it's this hot department store worker.
How about, Tamler, that scene where Dodd tells him no one else likes you, just me, right? It tells him, did you read that as he wanted to hurt him so that, he was kind of saying, I'm the only one that, that recognizes you has merit? Because with my reading of that scene, I keep feeling like I'm a Philistine, is that Freddie actually felt that he had connections with the other people in the group. And then Dodd cruelly told him, none of that's real. I'm the only person that likes you. I'm the only reason you're there. And that felt to me like manipulative and cruel, even if it was true, because it felt like Freddie did feel that he was accepted by the other people. I'm just checking. Am I a P zombie?
I think that I think it's true, but I think what he was saying isn't wrong. Those people were ready to throw him under the bus at the first opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and never mind the rest of the world that he's always running away from. So I think it's true, but I also think it was maybe a manipulative thing to say at that moment.
I think he was just upset. You know what I mean? Chris is so
just
cynical. You always attribute the worst motives. I think Lancaster Dodd was just upset and was telling him how it was.
And Freddie had just told him that his son had said he was full of shit.
Yeah.
Right. I think one of the uncomfortable truths being spoken here is that our relationships, even at their most sincere, are often manipulative, right? So we often, even with people whom we love, do things in order to get our way and in order to at least satisfy our needs. And so I read it always as, and I think this is where, Chris and I coming into it with a little bit of a different take. I always read it as, of course that's manipulative, but he's manipulating him because he really wants his affection. Yeah. He's just actually cares about the guy. That's how parents are sometimes. That's how, I certainly have seen people in more toxic relationships who love each other.
Yeah.
David does that to me. He manipulates me, but not affection.
I try.
Yeah.
It's hard to manipulate a psychopath.
I get mine up early in the morning. I say, we're going to record at 4 a.m. Tell me your log. What you doing today?
Yeah. Sleep deprivation, cutting me off from all other social connections. It's all happening.
And we're letting you talk.
That's right.
The thing is, Tamler, that's a good word.
Usually I just hold up a little piece of paper on Zoom that says, do you want to fuck?
Whoa.
This is going deep. This is going deep.
All right. Well, I think to draw a line under it, this has all been very interesting. This has all been fascinating, all of these interpretations. And
See, you got so much more than you thought you would.
I did. I got a lot from this. And I recognize all of it. I still didn't enjoy watching the movie. I still
enjoyed this
if there was
conversation.
if
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to see another movie like this, I would turn it down because fundamentally it wasn't entertaining for me. That's
Well,
I can
What
interpret
do you
the
mean
hell
by
out of it.
that? Yeah.
Well,
like,
I mean, I
just
can
in the genre of like cult.
no, a movie which doesn't have like it didn't go anywhere. It has all these interpretations and there's different sort of ways you can look at it, but ultimately I didn't know what the hell was going on really.
I
Like,
didn't realize you were such a black and white kind of thinker, Matt. I thought maybe what's being communicated through ambiguity is think for yourself about what human beings are like when they relate to each other. I thought,
you know what a good movie looks like? Dune. That's a really good movie. There's bad guys, there's good guys, there's spaceships and giant
Baron
fucking worms.
Harkonnen,
That's
he
what
was
I
That
like.
movie
terrible.
also just kind of tails off. Like I loved Dune. I loved seeing it in the theater, and I loved Denis Villeneuve. But that movie just kind of like in the
There's
same
another
way that
one,
this
Tamler.
movie does.
That's
not
because it's
finished.
part
Kind
one
of.
of like six. There's
Right.
going to be like five
I
more.
get it that there's another one, but still, like if you enjoyed that, you can maybe there'll be a master too. But maybe perhaps
were you
you'd be
very
more
upset at
comfortable
the
with the MCU or something like that, where
At
they
the-
just
At the end of Lord of the Rings, were you very
wait, there's an end?
What the hell? They didn't even get rid of the ring. But
I never I never saw Return of the King because everybody was saying that it just doesn't stop.
I will, though, I'll say this, Matt. The other day, we watched a movie and talked about it on the podcast where hedonically, my experience wasn't one of pleasure. But nonetheless, I think going into it with the sake of
Melancholia?
trying to, right, where I could say, I don't want to watch it again. And I certainly wasn't like entertained isn't the right word, but if you're going into it, I think, the filmmaker, I think in this case, wasn't randomly throwing stuff at us. There was something there that it was being communicated, but I get it. Like sometimes you just don't want to do the work of interpreting fairly ambiguous, maybe,
Then
maybe
just
it was
sit
a
back and
Rorschach.
watch like how like the filmmaking is enough. Like if
Yeah.
there's nothing, if like thematically it's not like hitting for you, just filmmaking wise. I feel this way with Melancholia, and I actually responded to the themes of both. But like in both cases, it's like, well, worst comes to worst, I'm just watching like all these one beautiful scene after another, and
Yeah. No, look, I enjoyed you guys talking about Melancholia, and that was the episode with the Oprah Winfrey takes too, wasn't it? Before I got to hear that one. That was
don't try to
Whoopi
pivot
Goldberg.
now, Matt. Don't do it.
we had to get some people to listen to us.
That's right.
They're not gonna like.
I was trying to think of like an ambiguous artsy fartsy movie that I like, and I thought of Blue Velvet. That's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a
There
nice
you
thing.
go.
That's
Well,
a nice thing.
now you're just sucking Tamler's dick.
Oh,
No,
I
but
don't even
get
know
it.
what that is.
It's a different kind of movie. Like that has a
Yeah.
plot, that has something that just keeps you moving through you, and then
Yeah.
it has a very clear like way of ending. And
Yeah.
I
Are
think
you guys big fans of Eraserhead? You like Eraserhead?
I'm a fan. Like I'm not. I don't. It's not my favorite of his movies, but yeah, it's.
I'm just
It's awesome,
calibrating.
kind of.
I'm just
No,
calibrating.
anything Lynch, Tamler will never speak ill of. Right? Lynch could shit onto do Rorschachs out of his poop, and Tamler would find the beauty in it.
He could put a worm inside a radiator.
A lady's pussy, not
a
just a
lady's
pussy,
pussy.
a lady's pussy.
I felt after watching like I had as I said, similar to Matt, like a lack of satisfaction, and I think I probably had because of my relatively unsophisticated palate when it comes to films, a reaction that I think it's the reason that this movie didn't get the audience that it entirely was expecting or was anticipated, because the framing of like, you know, the kind of master, the Scientology stuff, despite all the things that I've been saying, it's very much incidental, right? Like it could be the guy could be a business executive, and it's really about the relationship and these two characters, and that's what's important.
I think
so.
You're right. I think that actually hurt it. It's I avoided it because I was like, I don't want to see something vaguely about L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah. And I think that, like, maybe for me a little bit, all of that stuff, because I've got so much layered onto it with, you know, interests in cults and Scientology and whatever, it kind of interfered with just the character study of the people.
Yeah.
And then because that character story is like fundamentally made up of people I didn't like I don't like Freddie Quill, I don't like Lancaster Dodd. They're not good people. And I think apparently this is Paul Thomas Anderson's specialty, right? Is to make people that are a little bit broken, or that, you know, that they're real, but they're very flawed humans. And as a result, I just kind of didn't like anyone in the film, even the skeptic Tamler, even that guy that, you know, right on, get him, man. Yeah, like he was a dick too. Like it was clear that he was a dick.
Right.
So there's nobody in the movie that comes across as like a very appealing, down to earth character, apart from just incidental people that they bump into.
What about Lancaster Dodd, though? There is a kind of warmth to him that other people in the movie don't have, that I thought, like, actually, in some ways, he's the most sympathetic character in the movie. There is a kind of just, like, he really loves people and is genuinely trying to take care of them. He's got a lot of charisma. He's just, he seems, even though he's clearly struggling, he doesn't let that, it seems like, doesn't let that affect how he treats others in the way that other people do in the movie.
P-zombie take is that he's a manipulative cult leader. I'm sorry.
Well,
aside from that, that's on the comment.
I actually, I don't know. We got to wrap up, I know, but I think that Freddie's the only person he really cares about. I think he's actually, like, one of the things that you see at the end there when he's created this whole center, you know, he has like this big desk in this huge room. I think we see what we don't see throughout the movie is that he has been all along building a pretty shitty institution of like milking people out of their money. But I think he really does care weirdly about Freddie. And I found it touching.
About a lot of them.
Maybe. I did find it.
Don't go to another, Tamler. Don't go to another. You guys are really interested.
Well, I don't. Well, I'm with Chris. When the most sympathetic character is a manipulative cult leader who's fleecing everyone else for their money, and a narcissistic wanker as well, then your movie has an appeal problem.
Yeah. What about Fat Matt Damon? What's his name?
He's great.
Jesse. Yeah.
and very plausibly
call
the son.
him Fat Matt Damon.
I call him that in every single episode we've ever discussed him.
Yeah, but that's not cool.
But yeah,
he's the only he deserves Kirsten Dunst. Like and that's hard for me to say, but I think he deserves Kirsten Dunst. I love Jesse Plemons.
Yeah, he's great. Chris and Matt, I appreciate you guys going out of your comfort zone and watching such a disdainful cast of characters.
Well, it was Chris's fault for nominating it. Thank you, Chris. Try and nominate a more fun movie next time. I should have. No, it was good.
Like
Dune,
Shrek.
What did you think of that Baron? He was so bad, right? He's such a bad guy. Did you see the black he had?
No, it's been good, guys. I learned something. I learned more about the movie. I actually like it just infinitesimally more after talking to you guys about it. So
yeah,
it's good.
Did you guys see Licorice Pizza? This doesn't have to go on.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's great and much more fun and a
What's it
lot
called?
more likable character.
What's it called?
Licorice Pizza, his new movie.
It's his
Oh,
new
no.
movie.
No. Movies in general.
maybe you guys should stop watching, like maybe not watch like 18 hours of Joe Rogan a day and like watch like good movies.
Tamler, have you seen the discussion between James Lindsay, Michael O'Fallon, and Jordan Peterson? It's like, if you want to see gurus, oh my, the scenery alone.
I mean, you're metaphorically getting jerked off over the sink by all of those people. So I guess.
This is true. I can't interact with ordinary people anymore. They're just so mundane. Like, where's your Nobel Prize winning idea?
All right.
Thank you,
Good
guys.
stuff. Thank you very much. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Definitely.
thanks both for coming and and helping us class up our joint, at least for one episode. We'll continue to parasitically.
This is classing up your
absorb-
joint. Oh.
Yeah, this is it. This is the peak. Hey, we had Liam Bright. We got Liam Bright.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
we'll continue to parasitically absorb your audience, and you're at least older than one of us, so lurking in the shadows.
The only thing we ask is that you pay it forward to whatever parasitic podcast grows out of your listeners.
Oh yeah, God.
Sure.
Yeah, they'll
Sometime
come.
in the future, we'll definitely do that.
Reddit. We'll help them
We'll get to that right away.
up. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording, but don't go in case
Okay.
I need to check
Okay.
things. But yeah. So thanks, guys, and we'll do it again with a Disney movie or something next time.
Sounds good. Yeah.